And this is my beloved friend and co-teacher, Stephanie Kunkel, who is a hypnotist. And so I'm going to show the screen of what this is. This is Stephanie. Why is it like that? Yeah, what I learned from a narcissist and how it led me to hypnosis, Stephanie. I think like one of the reasons why I'm excited about doing this episode today is that I think that so this is an issue that so many people can relate to, and I think that it's something that has really come into the public awareness more recently, like even since we were kids. Don't you think?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, for sure.
Now, so, and also, I think the other thing that's really interesting about this is just that there are so many things that happen in our lives that inspire us to be who we are and do what we want to do. And a lot of times people don't know what those things are, and we don't really have a reason to talk about them much. So that's kind of another interesting part of this to me.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for having me on today. I appreciate it. This is definitely an important issue, definitely an important subject that we need to talk about. It's not being talked about enough, I don't think.
Yeah, I think, okay. So I guess maybe before getting into like the specific story of what happened, I'm just like wondering, before you understood kind of like what narcissism is, what did you experience it like? Or did you have any like...
I didn't know what it was. I was being completely gaslit.
Yeah.
How do you say
gaslit? Gaslit.
In the past tense, right? I was being completely gaslit and had no idea. This person to me, I thought was a really good, dear, trusted friend. In fact, I thought he was the only person on this planet that I could trust. But of course, he set it up that way. I didn't know that he was manipulating me at the time.
Right. What was I going to say about that? I had something that I was going to say about that. I think, all right, so like the thing is, I think that one of the things about narcissism is that when we meet a narcissist, when we're open to them, and we don't really understand what's going on because we wouldn't treat somebody the way that they would treat us.
We never do that. Right. We never even fathom that, right?
Right. They're kind of like operating in a way. Now I want to, before we get like too far down the road of like narcissism, I'll say that like you, Stephanie, and I, neither one of us are in a position to diagnose anyone with anything.
We're not medical doctors.
So but the thing is, Narcissist has come into the popular awareness more recently, and I was kind of going back and forth on this the other day, like, to what extent is it, like, useful for armchair psychologists to diagnose people or say that they suspect that somebody is narcissistic?
Well, I mean, I think that there are signs, though, and I think I think we should be aware of the signs.
Yeah, I think that, like, even if it's not, because also the other thing about narcissism is that it's like a scale. It's not like everyone who exhibits narcissistic traits or tendencies has narcissistic personality disorder.
Correct.
And I would say that maybe, like, to my mind, the biggest benefit in recognizing what a narcissist is like is so that you can understand how to deal with them. Like, if I know that the person that I'm like dealing with has narcissistic tendencies or is a narcissist, one of the things that I would do is I would be very careful about what kind of comes across to me as like being overly praised or love bombed or groomed into like kind of getting into their cult of personality, because I don't want to be too like special because somebody wants me to buy into their program. I want to be considered special because somebody actually sees me for who I am. All right. So anyway, I don't want to like hog the airtime, but yeah.
No, yeah, and that's exactly what they do. I guess, do you want me to go ahead and just go into the backstory a little bit? Okay.
Yeah.
So the narcissistic person that I'm referring to is someone who I dated in college and almost married. And I just got super lucky that I didn't end up marrying this guy. So this guy we had become friends. And I liked his personality. We had a lot in common. He was very intelligent. He was very much like egotistical about his IQ or whatever, but
Yeah.
a lot of people kind of
Self-confidence isn't in itself a flaw.
So, and I always thought he talked about that a little too much. Like that was a little like, that's kind of icky that you talk about your intelligence so much, but it didn't throw up any flags. He started grooming me when we became friends, and he wanted to be in a relationship with me. And I think I got lucky in that I was never physically attracted to him. I never felt chemistry with him. I never felt any kind of sexual energy towards him. I even remember telling my roommate at the time, like I could not ever even imagine kissing him.
Right.
But we were just friends, but we were such good friends.
Right.
And he was someone who I thought I could like really confide in and tell all of my secrets to. And, and we really did become good friends, and I would sleep over at his place and he would sleep over at my place, and I loved it that way. I could have just kept it that way forever.
Right.
But he had other plans in mind.
Right.
First starting off just manipulating me into getting into a relationship with him.
Right.
A romantic relationship that I didn't even really want to be in. But yeah. But he convinced me, and I was like, well, we are spending all of our time together, and, we do have a lot in common, and I am having fun hanging out with him. But then he definitely love bombed me. He definitely told me how beautiful and intelligent and pretty I was, yada, yada. But over this period of time, as I started trusting in him, I started telling him about my family life, what my family history was like. I started telling him my history in school and a period of when I was being bullied and stuff like that, which later he would use on me.
Now that I wanted to say that is like a huge, huge red flag for a narcissist, is that like when you're developing a relationship with somebody and you open up with them and you are vulnerable with them, that's like a kind of a, I'll show you a little bit of this and you show me a little bit of that, where like kind of like being on equal footing and stuff. Like most normal human being will take that, most non-narcissists, I don't want to like say normal, but most people who are not narcissistic will just like take that information and they'll be like, oh, I feel glad that you feel safe with me, then you're safe.
Absolutely. And I did. Right. When I say I trusted him more than I trusted my mother. I mean, this is how much I trusted him. I never thought he would even have the capability of hurting me or deliberately hurting me, which he had been doing. I didn't know it. He was, he was gaslighting me. He started telling me that some friends who had been very close to at school, he started saying that they were talking about me behind my back, and this is what they were saying, but he stood up for me. And then it was all these imaginary conversations that never happened. And at the time, I'm getting pissed at my friends. I'm like, why are they talking shit about me behind my back to my boyfriend?
Right.
Right? Like, why aren't they just coming? And at the time, I wasn't very confrontational. I'm much more confrontational now than I was then. I was actually more introverted too than I am now. So I didn't want to have that. I just was like sad. I was like, why do these people not like me? I don't understand this. And, it really got to the point where it was like, oh, I'm not going to say his name, but I was like, oh, you're the only person that I can trust. And he wanted it that way. And luckily for me, so a couple of things happened. So there was a silver lining to this. He was going to propose to me, and he was leading up to it, and I knew how to break up with him because I really had to have a deep conversation with myself about, do I want to just settle? Because, even though we're compatible and he loves me so much, just still not physically attracted to him, and I don't want to spend the rest of my life with him, with someone who I'm not sexually compatible with.
Right.
And that was really what it boiled down to. And I thought maybe that was really shallow of me, but then I just thought, this is the rest of my life with somebody. Because at the time, I was really like, my parents were divorced, and I really knew that when I got married, I really wanted it to make it last. And so it has to be the right person for me. He had different political and religious views than I did. And that didn't really bother me, but that was the excuse that I used to break up with him.
Oh,
Like,
good.
we're just too different. We just have two different ideologies, and I just can't, And the breakup was a whole thing. It was a whole thing. I would never wish anyone the type of breakup that I had. It was scary, and he would not leave my place, and I had to get my dad to come over and basically get him out and make him leave. But then he was like, okay, well, I want to stay friends with you, blah, blah, blah. I think he was going to try to get back into my graces. And so we stayed friends, but he still was playing this whole, just using everything that he knew about me to break me down now. Now he's not trying to build me up. Now he's trying to break me down. And how I can't do anything right, and how I'm not smart enough, and how I'm not, so now I have to rely on him.
Yeah, dude. That also is like a classic move. And I even see some influence people doing it where I'm going to create a problem that you didn't have before. Yes. And only I have the solution that I'm going to sell to you. And you didn't have this problem before, but now you do.
And I'm the only one who's sticking up for you. I'm the only one you can trust. I'm the only one who loves you. And I love you even for your flaws. And you are so deeply flawed, but I love you anyway. Okay.
Right, exactly.
So now it's reconfirming all of these like childhood, nightmares that I had of being bullied or whatever. And it's like, oh gosh, maybe I am this worthless, human, and I should be grateful that I have this person who loves me and nobody else in the world does. Luckily, I'm the type of person who, when I get so when I was very introverted, I would get overwhelmed and then I just quit. Like if I got so overwhelmed, it was like, I'm not like a quitter in general, unless it's so overwhelming that my life is completely feels out of control. Then it's like, this isn't working, do something else. So actually I took a year off of school and I traveled to Europe with a friend of mine. We went on this backpacking trip to Europe, and not because of him, but just I had the opportunity to do it. And while I was over there, I decided, well, I guess I hate all my friends. So I'm going to change majors. I'm going to go to a different school. I'm going to go to a whole different university, which I did. I applied to a whole different university, a whole different major. And I got accepted, and my new major was film and video, and I got accepted there. When I got back, I went to this new university. I made new friends, and I actually met my current husband in a film class that we took together. So he inadvertently sort of drove me into meeting my husband, who I've been married to now for, it'll be 22 years in November. Right. But I got, all right, but at this time, even when I'm with my husband, like I'm dating my husband now, and we're serious and we're about to get married, I'm still friends with this other guy. I'm still thinking like, oh, he's gonna, he had said something before, like he would come to my wedding and help me and bring me a hamburger if I was hungry or whatever, like he would be that person for me. And I bought into that for some reason. Like, okay, we're still going to be friends, yay. I wanted to be friends. I just didn't want to be lovers, So I invited him to my wedding, which was stupid. But I invited my whole, I did have a few friends left from that old university who in fact, they contacted me and they said, where did you go? Why did you leave? They were like, we're confused. What happened to you? And so I reconnected to them, and I'm realizing, oh, they liked me this whole time. And why they wouldn't be calling me and asking me, where did I go? And why haven't I visited them? And why didn't I tell anybody I was leaving? They had no idea what was happening. And so I reconnected with them, and I invited them to my wedding, and I invited this dude to my wedding. And then he came up. So he came up to me in the wedding, like we got married, and he was in the church.
Right.
And then at the reception, he came up to me and he said, I'm only here for the food. That was his greeting, not like congratulations. Why he came.
Did you feel like that was like burned? Did it make you feel bad, or was it just kind of funny at the time?
I was so overwhelmed by the wedding. I had a big wedding. I have a large Italian family. Had so many people coming up to me. I was like, I can't deal with this dude right now, but I did make a note of what he said. And and I thought, well, maybe he's just hurt. He wanted to marry me, so I get it. He's hurt. He's, that's his backlash. So now later, I'm on the phone with him. Now I'm married. I'm on the phone. I'm like, okay. And I told my current husband's name is John. And I even told John before, I said, I have this friend. His name is blank. And I'm always going to be friends with him. He's just going to be a part of my life. I need you to not be jealous, because we just have this good friendship and that's it. There's nothing sexual about it. And John was like, oh, fine. I have a friend like that too, which he did. And she was not attracted to him. And so it all worked out fine. But so now I'm like just on the phone talking to dude. And it's like I have this download. I'm just talking to him. I have this download. And I don't know what happened. Neurons were connecting, or angels were giving me messages. I don't know what happened. But in that moment, I knew what he had been doing like that.
Whoa, you had like a moment of clarity.
I had a moment of clarity, and I called him out of it on the phone.
Whoa.
He went silent for maybe a minute and a half. It was just silent.
I just got like full body chills. Whoa. What did he do with that?
He said he confirmed it. He confirmed that he was doing that to me. And he said, remember there was this time when we were driving somewhere and you told me that you couldn't be manipulated by anybody. Because I did say that because it was a whole conversation about family things. And I remember my family was manipulating me, but I figured it out. I was like, I can't be manipulated. And he said, remember when you said that? Well, that's when I was like, I can manipulate her. I was like, really?
Yeah.
That wasn't a challenge. That was not a challenge, dude.
That's the other thing that really it's like, that's so interesting. All right. So what your story kind of like confirms to me also is that I think that a lot of times when we get into these situations, it's kind of illuminating a wound that we already have, maybe about having like undue influence when we were younger. Like, maybe our parents didn't honor our, I guess I would call agency. I don't know if that is a word that is like up in the public awareness right now, but agency, it's not quite like free will. Like, let's just say it is, meaning that you have as much control as possible given your awareness and circumstances. I mean, how would you define agency?
Yeah, I mean, just having control of your own thoughts and surroundings, and
understanding that we can't control everything. We can't control everything, but we can have agency. I see like agency is kind of like the in-between space between being powerless and having total power, and we can't have total power, and we're not completely powerless. So like what we strive to cultivate is agency.
Right, I see what you're saying. And that the whole thing was that it was just like the wool had been over my eyes, and I was like, how did this go on for years? This must have been 3 years. And it's like, how did I not see it in all this time? It was so baffling. It still boggles my mind.
The other aspect of that story that comes out at me is that a lot of times, because you think, oh, I wouldn't be like that, or I wouldn't do that. And then you're like, well, maybe that behavior comes from a place of lack of self-awareness. And like, I think that actually a lot of times that whatever that is, it is totally self-aware. They know what they're doing at some level. I mean, they may not respect themselves for it, but they do it. And they know it. They know.
Completely and calculatingly knew what he was doing.
Right?
Yeah.
So like... Was narcissists are people too? And like, I always try to empathize with them, but sometimes I think that becomes a trap, because like, if you empathize with them, then you can suck them into like their version of why they're doing this, and that isn't necessarily like something that will be helpful to you.
I never really understood why he would even want someone who didn't want him back in the same way. I never got that.
Well,
I wonder if it had something to do with his own self.
And then if you want me to be like an armchair speculator, I will also say my armchair speculator is that like somewhere underneath all of that, like telling everyone that he's so smart and thinking so well of himself and all of that, is like a hurt little boy that actually doesn't love himself and doesn't feel like he ever gets enough of anything. And so he goes for, like, he's resonating with the part of you that doesn't like him either.
Right. Yeah. And so Mary and I were having this discussion the other day, and it just sort of dawned on me then that this is probably part of the reason why I wanted to learn hypnosis,
Right.
At least at a subconscious level, just so I can see the signs of someone trying to influence me subconsciously.
Right.
Right. And
Totally.
so, well, this is a good protection for myself. So if I can see it coming, maybe it won't happen again.
So I want to say, like, that's like admirable, but if you've ever experienced harm, you should know that like there's no amount of anything that you can ever do to prevent yourself from anything bad that could ever happen. Like, so like it's never your fault if you get into a situation and experience harm as a result of somebody's not being well. But it is true, and that's like a big part of my message, and what I want to do with this YouTube channel is just kind of shine a light on how influence is just something that we do. It's not something that you have to be trained in. We're always learning from feedback that we get, and I do think that there are some traits that people have that they can lead to kind of like a heightened ability to read people, and then whether they use that to like manipulate you in a non-consensual way, or whether they use that to help people, is like kind of up to the person.
Yeah. And also I have to say that this was long-term conditioning. It wasn't just, he was so skilled in the art of manipulation. It was long-term conditioning. And
because like if he had like come up to you on the first day and started beating you down, you'd just be like, what? No, that's not true. And you would have been out the door. That would not have been a fit. But because, and then also I think the other thing that narcissists can get you with is like the sunken cost thing. Like, now you've invested however much time it's been, and so it would feel like you've just wasted all that time. Yeah. If you realize that they're not a good deal.
Yeah, it did feel like a waste of time. But again, there's always a silver lining. Like, I would not have met my husband had I not gone through that ordeal, because I would have probably just stayed at the school that I was at, and our paths may not have crossed.
So you changed schools at that time?
Yeah, so I changed schools because I was overwhelmed, and I was going for a theater major, and at the time he had turned all of my theater friends against me, who were like my main friends, and he didn't really turn them against me. I just thought he did. He was just gaslighting me. They were fine with me. They had no beef with me. I started having a beef with them, and then everything they were saying, I'm just thinking, you're so two-faced, I know what you really think, right?
Do you think that they were really saying that, or do you think that he was fomenting dissent?
I don't think they were really saying it. I think out of all the people who he was saying stuff, there's one person who I think like, maybe she didn't really like me to begin with, so maybe I could see that. He started with that person who already kind of didn't like me already, and that was no surprise. But what started to be a surprise were the people who I thought were my good close friends, who would never betray me, and then they're saying all of this stuff about me behind my back, and then I never confronted them about it, which I should have at the time. I just believed what he said was true, because everything else he said was true.
I guess so having been through all of that, two questions I have. One would be, What did you learn that helped you to recognize some of those red flags in the future? And then the secondly, like, how does hypnosis help you with that?
The love bombing, definitely. And by the way, kind of jump forward about 15 years into the future, maybe 20 years from then. I had a stalker who was love bombing me, but I could see that from a mile away. Just like, okay, you're
Right.
creepy and you don't know me and you're saying that I'm just wonderful and fantastic and magnificent and yada yada. And it's like, no, block, but I think, even people with good self-esteem, people just like to be loved and they like to hear good things about themselves and they want to be held in esteem by others. And so it feels good. It's a good feeling when someone says that you're smart and you're beautiful and you're wonderful and yada yada. But
Right.
now it's kind of like, how are they saying this to me? Now I know it intuitively. But there are flags. I think it's like if they just keep telling you that's a flag. They keep the love
Like,
bomb.
I guess
Is they keep
one way that I would put it, one way that I experience it is that it feels kind of transactional. Like they're doing it for some undisclosed reciprocation in the future is what it feels like to me. When somebody is like kind of like complimenting you, it's kind of like maybe like the metaphor that popped into my head is like if you see like a wild animal and you start like petting it because you want to catch it and do something with it, then like that's kind of what it feels like to me.
Yeah, they want to control it, they want to manipulate it, or him or her, and it happens to men too, not just women.
Absolutely.
Men.
I think, I think that we're like in an interesting time. I do think that some of our gender conditioning can make some things look different in between men and women, but I really do think that like ultimately like humans are humans. We don't have like a female psychology versus a male psychology. I think that we respond to things in reasonable ways.
Yeah.
And I think that like, yeah. So in terms of hypnosis, I'm going to share with you something that you shared with our students at our last class. And this was under the category of ego strengthening. Now, interestingly, all right, so how would you describe, let's first of all, like, how would you describe like a healthy ego?
Oh, a healthy ego? I think
healthy ego.
Being as authentic as you can, being true to yourself is a healthy ego, and not feeling like you have to put on another personality to make someone else happy. I think that's a healthy ego, where you can be yourself and be in your authenticity, right? And be comfortable with that. I think that's a healthy ego.
Right. I think also like with a healthy ego, you're able to kind of like balance the needs of yourself and others, because like we all have to make compromises to live in society. We can't just do whatever we want because we want like and there are some things that we have to compromise on.
We have to compromise within reason, right?
Within reason. We shouldn't be made to do something like, for example, like I think this is like something that our society is just kind of like awakening to, is letting people like determine how their gender is, this is my gender. Some people get assigned a gender that they don't resonate with at birth, and so like we let them decide, like, self-determine. Where was I going with that? Okay, so healthy ego. Okay, it's like I think that a lot of people would say that a narcissist has a big ego or a strong ego, but I wouldn't necessarily know if that. I mean, do you think that is true in terms of like how we would think about it in terms of hypnotism?
So as far as, I would sort of define that ego as an identity and not their natural authentic ego that they were born with. I think that is a huge personality trait that springs from them for some reason. It could be a mental illness or it could be a trauma or whatever. But
Right.
and then they bolster themselves up with this ego and then
Yeah, it's like
use it against other people.
I guess maybe I would describe it as sometimes it can feel like a little bit of a fragile ego. Like they'll like expend a lot of energy to prevent their ego from being threatened.
Oh, for
Whereas
sure.
like a person with a healthy ego is able to like receive feedback from society and the universe and incorporate that into like maybe changing their sense of self if necessary and appropriate, depending on the circumstances.
Absolutely. And I can think of a president
changing or staying the same, but whether we change or we stay the same, like there's some sort of like stability to that, and there's some kind of like underlying logic to that.
Right. And again, it's important to be confident. It's important to have self-love and to know your value, know your worth, right?
Right.
But also know your limitations and also know how you're coming across to other people and also know when you're crossing other people's boundaries, right? Like know how to back away from that when you're encroaching on other people's boundaries.
Right. So the thing that we did in our class last week that was so great, and I think that it had like even like gave me like a little internal shift that may have contributed to my being ready to live stream this week. But like basically it was this practice of thinking about somebody that loves you very much without any strings attached. It could be like a person that's like a friend or a relative or a pet or something like that, but like somebody that just loves you unconditionally. And then step out of your own perspective and like step into their perspective and see yourself from that perspective of love, to see yourself from that perspective of just thinking that you're fantastic and
looking at yourself through the eyes of love.
Seeing yourself through the eyes of love. And it is such a powerful thing. Like I think that when you do that, you can even like kind of recognize parts of yourself that might be kind of hungry for that kind of like approval or hungry for that kind of attention. And when you can like experience that and you can give that to yourself, you become a little bit less vulnerable to somebody that might prey on that need.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, right. Also, during this time in my life, I was going through a depression. My parents were getting divorced, and I was sad, and you know, so it was like a melting pot of things. It wasn't just like one thing, but he picked up on that, and he used that to his advantage. He was taking advantage of that, of me being in my lowest place. And I think I was so vulnerable. I think if I hadn't have been so depressed at the time and so vulnerable myself, I probably would have picked up on the signs a lot quicker, a lot sooner, and not allowed myself to fall into this deviant, behavior that he was displaying. I think I would have picked up on that. So
there's Antonio says, "Hey, hi Antonio."
Hey, Antonio. Awesome. So, but yeah, as far as it's like, because I want to separate these narcissistic people who do the systemic abuse over a long period of time with conditioning from a hypnotist, okay, or hypnotherapist who is going to help you over a short period of time. Now, there are some hypnotists who are nefarious, but I think nefarious, I'm making that a huge word, but by and large, most hypnotists and hypnotherapists and most of my colleagues that I know are really good people at heart, and they're very ethical, and they will not, harm you at all.
So, yeah, I actually think that most hypnotists that I know are so respectful of the power of their influence that they err on the side of caution, and they don't influence people as much as they could because they don't want to exert undue influence. I know I am that way. Like I'm very demure about the way that I use my influence because I want to foster autonomy with the people that I'm interacting with. I want people to recognize their own power. I don't want them to feel reliant on me. I don't want them to feel like their goodness comes from me. No, like none of that. It's like I want people to recognize that like their own best guidance. And I know that that is something that they're going to have to find out for themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't want to even influence people to like me. I want them to like me because they like me for who I am, not because I've influenced them into liking me
exactly.
somehow,
I feel like that too. I'm just like, well, like if I have to like sell you on it, then it's not worth my time.
Yeah, exactly. It's like I don't want to I don't want to create any karma. I just want it to be just cool and normal, and and I don't want to abuse the hypnotic power. I'm going to put these in quotes, hypnotic power, because we know that the power comes from within the person, the individual.
I would even say, so like there's like this energy expenditure that happens when you're influencing somebody, and with a narcissist, they do it because they're getting something out of it. Like they're getting some sort of emotional gratification, or in some cases, they even have like material gratification or incentive to influence you. And so that's their payoff. But like, I feel like with hypnosis, it's like pre-negotiated and clean. Like you're telling me what kind of influence you want exerted over yourself. And I'm showing up to do that for you. And then there's like an exchange of energy, and that's what I'm getting out. And I'm willing to expend my energy to do that. But I wouldn't do it if I weren't getting paid, because I'm not getting anything out of it otherwise. I don't want to have like any sort of like unexpressed or,
I get the question sometimes when I'm just out and about, and maybe at a party or something, and somebody will say, "Oh, are you hypnotizing me right now?" And I go, "No, because you're not paying me. So I'm not going to work when I'm not getting paid."
I will say, like, I've seen a lot of people like hypnotize themselves in my presence. That's always funny. But I know, like, I remember when I was first starting out, I did a lot of psychic fairs because that was just an easy way for me to interact with people and kind of practice talking to people about what I do. And there's this woman that like kind of like stood in front of my son, and like her eyes just glazed over like that, and she was just like kind of a deer in the headlights. And then she was just like, "I don't believe in hypnosis." That kind of like speak to the disbelief aspects that people have around hypnosis. I think I'm kind of wondering what that's about. I don't know. What do you think that skepticism is about?
Well, part of it could be true skepticism, but I think the majority of it is just fear of the unknown.
Yeah.
And what does that mean about me? Like, if I can be hypnotized, does that mean I have a weak mind? So people think that, right? And
it's like, do you think it's kind of like I feel uncomfortable thinking about the fact that there might be some part of my psyche that I don't totally understand or control? Yeah.
Yes. Right. Yeah. I think some people going like, well, I don't know if the brain, maybe they're very scientific thinking and they can't understand how the brain could function that way. But I think that's rare. I think for most people, it's just the fear of that. Oh,
and
maybe
also,
I want to say they think that they can, that hypnotists can control people.
Right. I also want to say that like, that's kind of part of one of the things that I'm experimenting with and exploring with this channel is just to have like a super playful vibe. You can see I have kind of like sensational topics and playful graphics and colors. And I think that is one of the things that I have loved about hypnosis is that it has a side where it's like, okay, we're doing research and we're validating some of the things that we know about hypnosis, but at the same time, like, the field of hypnosis has space for all the weird stuff. Like,
true.
Like there are people that are using it to have like, out of body experiences or travel to other planets or visit past lives or however you want to think about it, whether you believe in that or not, but they're having like
angels and the
totally stuff. And the thing about all that is that is like part of the human experience. Like it's kind of like NDE. It's like whatever you believe about whatever people's near-death experiences are, that is a common experience that people report. And that's part of the human experience.
All over the world and across time, right?
Right. So I like it that that hypnosis has space for all of that. We don't claim to understand it completely. We just enjoy experiencing whatever our brain wants to experience.
Right. Absolutely. And interesting. I do know a couple of people who will one guy in my neighborhood I can think of in particular when he doesn't want to look into my eyes because if he does, he thinks he's going to be hypnotized just by looking into my eyes. And so like, I'll
Right.
see him at the pool and, and
I
he'll
think that's great. He's demonstrating the power of expectation. You set such a great expectation, right? That power. Well, right. So that to circle back around to narcissists, they take all this power that we give them, but I think that part of taking our power back when we get involved with a narcissist is recognizing that all that power that they have over us is at some point like power that we have given to them.
Yeah.
And then once you realize that you've given them that power, then that's like how you can kind of start dialing it back.
And they take it by inches, not by miles. So it's kind of hard to tell when you're in it, especially if you're in a depressed state already or some sort of
it's like trauma. Opportunistic too. It's like they'll do it when they see an opening to do it.
Right, exactly. And it's just like you become acclimated to them and their behavior, and you excuse the behavior and you excuse the behavior and you excuse the behavior, and then it just becomes a normal thing, right? So really you need to catch it in the beginning, and not excuse the behavior and think like, why are they behaving this way? What other people don't treat me this way, or like what's different about them?
Yeah.
And even with, I was gonna say, like with my own husband, who does actually love me and care about me and would take a bullet for me, he didn't do all that love bombing with me. He had very respectful conversations, and and he shows me his love and by showing up and doing the things, but not just by trying to talk me into loving him. He showed me his love by his actions and his true support.
I think that's another good sort of benchmark, is just comparing what people say to what they do.
Exactly. Yeah.
As a data point.
I believe behavior. That's my motto. I don't believe what people tell me necessarily, but I do believe their behavior.
Right.
How do they treat you?
Sense.
Right.
Sweet.
Do you feel good when you're around this person, or do you feel like you're defensive all the time, or do you feel like you're angry all the time, or mad at your friends?
Do you feel like they're always looking for like some sort of like leverage over you?
Yeah, it is like, no, you should. You should just feel comfortable with your partner. You should just feel comfortable. And, that doesn't mean you're always going to be happy all the time. You'll have fights and stuff, but for the most part, you should just feel like yourself and comfortable, and you're not always in this elevated emotional state around them.
Yeah. I think also another thing is, like, in a healthy relationship, it's not that you're 100% totally safe. Like, I think that the possibility of hurting each other is always a possibility, but at least in a healthy relationship, if you express that you are hurt, that the other person is like hopefully willing to kind of like talk about that and take responsibility if appropriate, or at least to sit with the uncomfortable feelings that you're hurt.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that my husband and I are good at doing, is neither one of us like that tension, that unspoken tension when you've been kind of fighting or something, just kind of nitpicking at each other or whatever. And it's just like, we both want to clear that air as quickly as possible. So we'll talk about it. We'll be like, hey, I'm sorry too. Like we will say, I'm sorry. And like, that was stupid. Let's just move on. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't do that in their relationships. And by the way, I also want to mention, I don't think I've been engaged before to someone else who is not the person that I'm talking about. I don't think this person is even watching, but I'm going to say, if Scott is watching, this is not about you, Scott. It's about someone else. That just didn't work out for other reasons, but but I'm not talking about you. But the dude that I am talking about, I haven't even seen him. I don't know. I don't even know where he is. I've actually tried to look for him on social media just so I could be aware of what he's up to. But I did at one point try to find him, and he wasn't there. So I'm like, did he even pass away? I don't even know. I have no idea what happened to him.
I want, because I have it and I've just been dying to use it. My finger is itchy to push this button a little, like tip to our viewers, just to reiterate that ego strengthening exercise that we talked about earlier. This practice of holding yourself in unconditional positive regard, by stepping into the perspective of somebody that loves you unconditionally, and then just shining that love to yourself and letting it letting it sink in and absorb in all the places that you need it. It can even like go into places of yourself that you might not have been formerly aware of. Like that's kind of what I experienced when we did that in our class last week, was just, and also creating that environment of emotional safety with yourself.
Yeah. And my heart goes out to the people who actually ended up marrying the narcissist. A lot of people do that, and it's so much more difficult when you're married, and especially if you have children with the person. It's so hard. And I just want to acknowledge, like, I know I got super lucky to get out of it. But I know people who have been trapped in some really bad marriages and relationships.
Yeah, absolutely.
And children are involved, and, you know, my heart goes out to you.
I think, the ego strengthening thing, like, it's probably a practice to do over time, right? Like, that's something that I would say is not going to be like the magical wand that fixes everything in this moment, but it's something that if you do, and you can do it both in that way that we talked about, where you're going into the perspective of somebody who loves you unconditionally. Mm-hmm. You could also do the Louise Hay version, which is to look yourself in the eye and the mirror and say to yourself, Marian, I love you, just like right into your eyes. That's like it can be like surprisingly powerful. It can be surprisingly uncomfortable, but if you can like kind of sit with that discomfort, it will begin to change things for you. And you may not
healing, very healing.
Yeah, exactly. And as you start to kind of create that space for yourself to heal, like more steps will become apparent to you. I really do believe. Maybe you'll even have that moment of clarity that Stephanie had.
Yeah. So some people have had that moment of clarity, but now they're like, you know, stuck in it or whatever, or they've just gotten out of the relationship. And I get so many people, and my heart always breaks for them, who come to me because they want me to hypnotize them to forget
right.
to forget their ex, to forget this narcissist. And unfortunately, that's not exactly the way the psyche works.
It's not the way that hypnosis works. And I think that is like, I have gotten that too, where they're just like, okay, like, this is what I want you to do. I want you to just make me forget that person. And that's like, well, yeah. Also, like, you're telling me how to do my job. I want to like honor what my clients want for themselves, but I'm not going to do something that I know is not good for them and probably can't be done.
Yeah, we can give temporary hypnoamnesia. I can, hypnotize you to make you forget the number 5 for a certain amount of time. It is in your psyche. It will come back up even if I don't remove that suggestion. You're not going to go forever not remembering the number 5, right? I could not permanently get you to forget someone. That is totally up to your psyche, and you don't. If you forget that person, it's kind of like forgetting that the snake is in your backyard, right? And you walk out and you get bit because you forgot it was there. It's kind of like we do need to have that memory of the person and what happened. But what we can do for you as hypnotherapists is we can help remove the high emotional charge. We can help do the ego strengthening work with you.
Help create, or even like call back the parts of yourself that you have like given over.
Yeah.
We call back the parts of yourself. We can like make it, or we
can help you
part of the healing process. I do think is to kind of get into peaceful relationship with that memory so that you're not fixating on it.
Right. And, and ultimately the thing that forgives the thing that works the most is forgiveness. And I know that's really, really hard, really super hard to do with someone who has been systematically abusing you. And that's not something we would try to force you to do until you were ready anyway. But ultimately, that is what heals.
And I also think like a big thing for people that have been through any kind of harm is like also forgiving themselves for letting themselves be harmed.
Right.
It's like such a human reaction to feel like, oh my God, be hard on myself because I allowed that bad thing to happen to me. And
right. And forgiveness does not mean that you're excusing the person for their bad behavior. And it doesn't mean that you have to ever be around the person again or put yourself in a danger again. It just means you're just letting go. Just letting go of it.
Yeah, I like the way that Nadia Bowles-Weber puts it. She is, I think, a Lutheran pastor. She said that forgiveness is like a bolt cutter that like breaks you away from that person that harmed you. It's like, now I love myself so much that I choose not to be attached to this bad thing anymore.
Exactly. Like that, some old proverb that, holding anger and unforgiveness is like drinking poison and hoping the other person will die. You're poisoning yourself, really, and you really are, because people become sick, literally physically sick, over these emotions of these negative
kind
emotions.
of like somaticizing some of that negativity from that experience.
They can have lots of physical illnesses from that, so it's just so much healthier to release it. Maybe they don't deserve forgiveness, but you deserve to just
freedom. You deserve peace. You deserve freedom and peace.
Right. Exactly. Freedom and speed. And don't let them take up your headspace, right?
Unless they're going to pay rent.
Valuable real estate.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, thank you so much, Stephanie. I always enjoy doing videos with you. I always have so much. Hey, folks, if you've enjoyed this, please subscribe to my channel, or hit like, comment on the video. I'll make sure to put something in the video description so that you know how to get a hold of Stephanie if you want to learn more about her and what she does. And until then, I'm gonna see you all again tomorrow, where I'm going to be talking to Scott Sandlin we're going to be talking about what constitutes a sentience with regards to AI, artificial intelligence. And he's like, so
I'm excited to watch that.
yeah, me too.
Well,
all right.